The vastness of space stretched endlessly before the alien ship, its sleek, dark silhouette drifting silently as it orbited an uncharted planet. The ship's design was advanced, the kind of technology that would make most galactic empires envious. Inside the ship, a team of highly skilled alien soldiers prepared for a mission, one that they believed would be just like any other. Their target was human, a species they had considered primitive and weak. But little did they know, this human soldier would soon show them the true power of humanity. Bonner, the human soldier, was aboard a small reconnaissance ship when it was ambushed. His ship was disabled by a sudden burst of energy, and before he could even react, his craft was being pulled toward the alien ship. Trapped in a high-tech alien tractor beam, Bonner could do little as his vessel was yanked through the vast expanse of space and brought on board the enemy ship. He had seen many battles before. He'd fought in the most dangerous environments and survived situations that would have broken others. But nothing had prepared him for what came next. As he stepped off the transport shuttle, he could feel the cold, oppressive atmosphere of the alien ship. The walls of the ship were lined with strange, glowing symbols, and the air smelled sterile, like the inside of a lab. He could hear the soft hum of machinery and the distant whispers of alien voices speaking in a language he didn't understand. The aliens had already disarmed him, stripped him of his weapons, and locked him in a metallic cell. They had done their research. They knew Bonner was human, and they were eager to begin their interrogation. They had captured humans before, and their methods were effective. With their advanced technology, they had never failed to extract the information they needed from their prisoners. Humans, they thought, were nothing more than a minor obstacle, easily overcome with their superior tactics. Bonner was escorted through a maze of cold, metallic hallways, his arms shackled by energy cuffs that glowed faintly as they suppressed his movements. He walked with a calm determination, his mind sharp and focused. The aliens who surrounded him exchanged whispers, clearly curious about their prisoner. They had underestimated him. They thought he was just another soldier, weak and easily broken. They brought him into a large room that resembled a high-tech interrogation chamber. Strange, intricate machines lined the walls, their humming noises filling the air. The centerpiece of the room was a large chair, equipped with various devices that looked both painful and complex. Bonner was forced into the chair, and the energy cuffs around his wrists and ankles were secured to the armrests and footrests. An alien officer, tall and imposing, stood before him. The officer was clad in black armor, his eyes glowing a soft green as they stared down at Bonner. "You are human," the officer said, his voice cold and detached. "Tell us what we need to know, and this will go easier for you." Bonner didn't respond. He simply stared back at the officer, his face an unreadable mask. He had been trained to withstand interrogation, to resist pain and fear. The aliens were about to find out just how resilient humans could be. The officer signaled to his subordinates, and the machines around Bonner sprang to life. Energy tendrils shot out from the walls, attaching themselves to Bonner's body. His muscles tensed as the devices began to probe his mind. Alien technology flooded his brain, searching for weak spots, for cracks in his mental defenses. The officers watching from behind a protective glass wall expected him to scream, to beg for mercy, but Bonner remained still, his face expressionless. The first few attempts to break him were unsuccessful. The aliens had designed their machines to probe the deepest corners of the human psyche, but nothing seemed to work on Bonner. His mind was calm, even under the intense pressure of the alien devices. The alien officers exchanged confused glances. The lead officer, clearly frustrated, turned to one of his subordinates. "Increase the intensity. We need to break him quickly." The subordinate obeyed, and the machines buzzed to life, their energy increasing exponentially. Bonner's heart rate began to rise, his breath quickening. But he didn't speak. He refused to let them see any weakness. As the intensity grew, his mind began to race, but he still held firm, mentally bracing himself against the onslaught. Meanwhile, the aliens observed from behind the glass, growing more and more perplexed. The humans' resistance was unlike anything they had encountered before. Most species they had interrogated fell apart after just a few minutes. But Bonner, despite the overwhelming pressure, was holding strong. "We've tried everything," the officer said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Why isn't he breaking?" One of the scientists present suggested, "Perhaps there's something different about this human. Their minds, they're more resilient than we thought." The officer was not pleased with the suggestion. Impossible. No species should be able to withstand this level of interrogation. Increase the power again. But as the pressure mounted, Bonner's resolve did not falter. He had been trained for situations like this. His training in survival and mental discipline had prepared him for far worse than this. The aliens' technology might be powerful, but it wasn't foolproof. Bonner had learned to fight against the odds, to turn any disadvantage into an advantage. And now, as the machines buzzed around him, he could feel the subtle hum of the alien technology, its pattern, its rhythm. He could use that. He focused, clearing his mind of all distractions, and began to manipulate his own body's reactions. His heart rate steadied, his breathing slow and deliberate. He imagined the energy tendrils as nothing more than harmless threads, something he could slit through. Slowly, carefully, Bonner began to block out the alien probes, his mind refusing to give in. The aliens continued their efforts, but no matter how hard they tried, Bonner's mind remained unyielding. His face showed no sign of pain, no fear, just the calm of someone who had faced death many times and survived. The aliens were growing desperate. "Why isn't this working?" one of them muttered. They didn't understand. They had seen humans as weak, inferior beings. But Bonner was showing them a side of humanity that the aliens never expected. His willpower, his sheer determination, was something they could not break. The more they tried, the more frustrated they became. And with every failed attempt, Bonner's confidence grew. He wasn't just surviving this, he was winning. At that moment, the alien officer's frustration boiled over. "Send in the enhanced AI probes. We need answers, now." But even as the alien soldiers rushed to bring in the AI probes, something shifted in the room. Bonner's eyes flickered with a subtle glimmer of awareness. The alien technology might have been advanced, but he knew he was just getting started. They had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated the resilience of humanity. The first chapter of this story ends here, with Bonner still seated in the interrogation room, the aliens growing more desperate with every passing second. But they don't know it yet. This human soldier is far from being the weak, helpless prisoner they think he is. The real battle is only just beginning. The alien officers were growing increasingly frustrated. The interrogation had lasted for hours, yet Bonner remained eerily calm. Every attempt they made to break him seemed to fail spectacularly. The high-tech devices they had used on countless prisoners, mind-reading AI, psychological manipulation machines, and invasive probes, had all proven ineffective against him. It was almost as if Bonner was immune to the techniques that had worked flawlessly on other species. "He's not normal," one of the alien officers muttered, as he watched Bonner's unyielding resolve on the screen. "This human is different." In the cold, sterile interrogation room, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Bonner sat strapped to a chair in the center of the room, his arms and legs held in place by glowing energy restraints. The alien machines hummed around him, their lights flickering as they tried to probe deeper into his mind. But no matter what they did, Bonner's mind stayed locked. His heart rate didn't spike, his breathing didn't quicken. He was calm, focused, in control. As the minutes passed, Bonner's face remained a perfect mask of composure. The aliens couldn't understand it. They had tried everything: high-frequency sound waves, pulse energy blasts aimed at his nervous system, and even direct access to his neural pathways through advanced AI probes. Yet nothing seemed to faze him. The chief officer in charge of the interrogation, An imposing alien with sharp features and eyes that glowed an unsettling shade of red stepped forward. He had been the one to order the escalation in methods. He had watched as his soldiers had ramped up the pressure, hoping to break Bonner's spirit, but all their efforts had been in vain. Now, with growing impatience, he spoke. "Increase the frequency of the neural probes," he ordered. "We are wasting time." Bonner barely flinched. His mind was a fortress, and every attempt to breach it only seemed to deepen the mystery surrounding him. As the machine around him hummed louder and the temperature in the room grew colder, Bonner's calm expression remained unchanged. But now, a small smirk appeared on his face. The aliens didn't notice at first, but it was there. A quiet, subtle indication that Bonner knew something they didn't. His eyes flicked briefly toward one of the small, glowing panels mounted on the wall. To the untrained eye, it seemed like nothing more than a simple display, a screen that controlled the flow of energy to the machines. But Bonner had been observing every detail since the moment he entered this ship. The way the lights flickered on and off, the pattern in the room's temperature shifts, even the slight hum of the walls. He had noticed it all. And now he was beginning to put the pieces together. Bonner knew that these aliens, despite their advanced technology, had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated him. They thought that because they had superior technology, they would easily be able to break him, force him into submission. But Bonner was no ordinary soldier. He had been trained for situations like this, trained to fight back, not just with weapons, but with his mind. And now, trapped in this alien ship, he was using every scrap of knowledge he had to manipulate his surroundings. The aliens, still watching from behind a protective glass panel, did not notice the subtle changes in the room. They didn't see the way Bonner's smirk widened or the way his fingers twitched ever so slightly, as if he was reaching out to touch something invisible. It was as if he was tapping into something. Perhaps it was the slightest fluctuation in the room's energy field, or the faintest change in the air pressure, but Bonner was using his awareness to tap into the systems that controlled his environment. He had no idea what the aliens were thinking, but he knew this: his chances of escape were growing by the second. The chief officer observed Bonner's calm demeanor, then glanced at his subordinates. "This human, how is he resisting our interrogation?" he muttered to himself. Another officer, an alien with pale blue skin and delicate features, spoke up hesitantly. "Perhaps he is not resisting. Maybe he's not even feeling what we're doing to him." "What do you mean?" The chief officer's tone was sharp. The blue-skinned officer continued, "I've been reviewing the readings from the neural probes. They're showing no signs of distress, no increase in mental instability. It's like he's not affected." The chief officer's eyes narrowed. "This is impossible. I've been in command of interrogations for decades. No species, not even the toughest, can resist this level of mental intrusion." Bonner's smirk widened just a fraction more, though he kept his eyes focused on the wall before him. In that moment, the alien officers realized they were playing into his hands. They had assumed they could break him by overwhelming his senses, but Bonner was too smart for that. He wasn't just resisting. He was manipulating the technology to his advantage. Slowly, subtly, he was reprogramming the machines to work in his favor. One of the glowing panels above him flickered. The chief officer looked up, unaware that the small change had been made by Bonner. The aliens weren't aware of how their own machines were starting to malfunction. What had once been instruments of torture were now beginning to serve as tools of escape. As Bonner's awareness expanded, he could feel the energy in the room shift. The subtle hum of the AI machines had changed pitch. The flickering lights were no longer erratic. They had fallen into a rhythmic pattern, a kind of pulse that Bonner could control. The energy restraints around his wrists and ankles were still holding him in place, but the rest of the ship's systems were beginning to respond to his silent commands. In a flash, Bonner's eyes gleamed with understanding. He had found a vulnerability, a crack in the alien system. Using the slight fluctuations in the eye's power grid, he began to interface with the ship's cloaking system. The technology that had once been used to conceal the ship from enemies now became Bonner's weapon. Slowly, silently, he activated the ship's cloaking device, cloaking his presence from the ship's monitoring systems. The aliens continued their efforts, oblivious to the fact that Bonner had just taken control of a critical system. They were still focused on breaking him, unaware that he had already begun to turn the tide in his favor. Bonner sat still, his smirk barely perceptible. The next step was coming. He could feel it. The aliens were about to make a crucial mistake, and when they did, he would be ready. The question was no longer whether or not he would escape. It was when. As the room filled with the quiet hum of machines and the alien officers debated their next steps, Bonner remained perfectly still, every muscle in his body prepared for what was to come. What the aliens didn't know was that Bonner had just unlocked their greatest weakness, their overconfidence. He wasn't the helpless prisoner they thought he was, and soon they would learn just how big of a mistake it had been to underestimate a human soldier. The moment Bonner felt the shift in the ship's energy field, he knew it was time. His subtle manipulation of the aliens' cloaking and power systems had set something in motion, something small but significant. A flicker of light, a buzz from the power grid. At first, it was imperceptible to the aliens, but Bonner could feel the disruption. It was enough. It was just the opening he needed. The alien officers, still reeling from the shock of Bonner's calm defiance, hadn't noticed the subtle shift in the ship's systems. They were too busy arguing among themselves, trying to figure out why their interrogation was failing so badly. Their overconfidence in their technology and methods had blinded them to the growing threat that Bonner posed. But Bonner was different. He was alert, every sense on high alert, every detail carefully monitored. The hum of the ship's power grid, the flickering lights above, the subtle shifts in temperature, all of it was a map in his mind. He knew that if he could push just a little further, he could escape. And now, the moment had come. In a heartbeat, Bonner manipulated the AI security system once again. He had learned the patterns of the ship's systems, and now he used them to his advantage. A small spark, barely noticeable, but powerful enough to send a ripple through the energy grid, was all it took. The ship's lights flickered, and the security holograms malfunctioned. For a moment, the entire ship seemed to tremble. The aliens in charge of the interrogation room froze, their eyes widening as they watched their sophisticated systems go haywire. The once flawless security systems had just begun to glitch, and their confident expressions turned into ones of confusion. "What happened?" the chief officer muttered, stepping closer to the screen. One of the officers attempted to reset the security systems, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. Bonner's manipulation of the power grid had triggered a wave of chaos throughout the ship. Systems began to short-circuit, and robotic guards, once perfectly in sync with their commands, started malfunctioning. Bonner's heart raced, but his mind remained calm. He had already expected the aliens to panic. What they didn't realize was that the moment they tried to counter his escape, he would strike. He was no longer the prisoner. The tables had turned. The first wave of alien soldiers rushed into the corridor outside the interrogation room, alerted by the disruption. They were armed with advanced blasters, their faces set in grim determination. But Bonner was prepared. He had studied their moves, learned their patterns, and now he would use that knowledge to his advantage. As the first few soldiers turned the corner, Bonner pushed off from the chair with unexpected speed. He moved like a shadow, quick and fluid, darting across the room. In a blink, he grabbed one of the fallen alien blasters from the floor. The weapon hummed with an eerie blue glow, but Bonner wasted no time. He fired it at the control panel near the door, causing sparks to fly and the entrance to momentarily shut down. The aliens outside hesitated for just a moment, their confusion working in Bonner's favor. Without missing a beat, he turned to face the malfunctioning robotic guards that had been standing by. They were still programmed to follow orders, but with their systems now glitching, they were no longer able to carry out their tasks with precision. Bonner grinned. His training had taught him that there was always an advantage to be found in the chaos. With a swift motion, he activated the blaster again, targeting the closest robot. The weapon discharged, and the robot short-circuited, its glowing red eyes flickering as it collapsed to the floor. But more were coming. More aliens, more robots. They flooded the hallway, hoping to contain the chaos. But Bonner was already on the move. With his instincts kicking in, he darted toward a narrow side corridor, narrowly avoiding the next wave of blaster fire. His movements were a blur, fluid, precise, and unpredictable. The aliens were unprepared for the ferocity of his counterattack. As Bonner dashed through the winding corridors, he turned on the spot and fired again. Sparks flew as a nearby security panel exploded, releasing a blast of energy that sent one of the soldiers stumbling backward. The sound of metal scraping against metal filled the air, and Bonner's heart raced, but his mind stayed sharp. His movements were deliberate, each step calculated, each move designed to disorient the enemy. The alien soldiers, once so confident in their superiority, were now disorganized. Their blasters fired wildly, hitting walls and panels instead of their intended target. Bonner was using their own technology against them, creating confusion and chaos with every step. The lights in the ship flickered again, blinding the aliens and forcing them to adjust their vision. The malfunctioning AI systems added to the chaos, creating holographic illusions that disoriented the soldiers. They couldn't tell if Bonner was in front of them, behind them, or somewhere else entirely. The ship had become a maze, a dangerous labyrinth of malfunctioning technology and frightened aliens. Bonner moved like a ghost through the chaos. He used the blaster to disable more robotic guards, then grabbed a discarded alien weapon from the ground. With each encounter, his confidence grew. He was no longer the captured soldier in a cage. Now he was the hunter, and the aliens were the ones trapped in their own ship. He knew he couldn't waste this opportunity. Time was running out. As Bonner sprinted down a narrow passage, he saw a doorway ahead. It was an emergency exit, leading to the outside of the ship. He had no idea where it would take him, but it was his only chance. But just as he reached for the door's control panel, a surge of energy shot through the hall, and the door slammed shut. The aliens had activated a lockdown. It wasn't enough to stop Bonner, though. He had learned their systems well enough to know that a little more pressure on the power grid could override the lockdown. He moved quickly, pulling out his last weapon, a small explosive device he had taken from one of the guards. He placed it carefully near the power junctions, then pressed the detonator. The explosion sent a shockwave through the ship, rattling the walls and causing another system malfunction. Sparks flew, and the air crackled with energy. The door to the emergency exit opened once more, and Bonner didn't hesitate. He bolted through it, out into the open space beyond. The stars stretched out before him, endless and cold. But he wasn't free yet. The aliens would be right behind him, and Bonner knew he had only moments to act. The first attempt at escape had been successful, but the real challenge was just beginning. Bonner's heart pounded as the last group of alien soldiers closed in on him. The tight corridor was filled with the sound of robotic footsteps, echoing in the cold metal halls of the ship. There were no more illusions, no more tricks. This time, it was real. The aliens had pushed him into a corner, and it seemed like escape was no longer an option. But Bonner wasn't about to give up. He had something they didn't, a secret hidden deep within humanity's history that no alien could have foreseen. The group of alien soldiers moved forward, their weapons raised, their eyes cold with the certainty that they would finally capture the human who had caused them so much trouble. Bonner took a deep breath, his mind racing. The odds were stacked against him, but he knew he had one final advantage, something that no one had expected. As the first alien soldier stepped closer, Bonner revealed a small worn item from his gear, a weapon, ancient by the standards of the aliens, but powerful in its own right. It wasn't high-tech like the blasters the aliens used, or the energy weapons they carried. No, it was far more primitive. A simple knife, forged from metal, but honed to perfection. Bonner's fingers wrapped tightly around the hilt, his grip steady as he prepared for the battle ahead. The aliens seemed confused for a moment. They had never seen a human fight with something so basic. But that was the point. Bonner knew that in close-quarters combat, a weapon like this could be far more effective than anything the aliens had ever dreamed of. It was a weapon that required skill, speed, and strategy, things that humans were masters of. The aliens were used to relying on their advanced technology, but Bonner understood something they didn't. Technology could fail, but skill and resourcefulness were the ultimate weapons in any fight. The tension in the air was thick as Bonner raised the knife, his eyes locked on the aliens as they hesitated. They couldn't believe it. They had been trained to face the best of the galaxy's forces, but they had never faced something like this. A human soldier who fought with heart and courage rather than just the latest technology. Bonner knew this was his moment. As the first alien soldier lunged at him, Bonner moved with a fluid motion, his body reacting faster than the alien could follow. With a swift twist of his wrist, he parried the soldier's blaster, knocking it out of his hand. In the same motion, Bonner closed the distance, his knife slashing across the soldier's side. The alien gasped in surprise as it crumpled to the ground, its weapon useless in its hand. The remaining soldiers hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. They were accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with superior firepower, but they couldn't overpower Bonner with their fancy tech. Bonner was faster, smarter, and more resourceful than they had ever anticipated. With each swing of his knife, he made them realize just how dangerous a human could be when backed into a corner. But it wasn't just his skill that gave Bonner the edge. It was something deeper. As he fought, his thoughts drifted to his fallen comrades, the soldiers who had given their lives for the freedom of Earth. Their faces flashed in his mind, reminding him of the sacrifices that had been made, the families that had lost loved ones, and the hope that had driven them all to fight. Bonner's resolve strengthened as he thought of them. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Earth. It was about humanity's future. He wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for every man, woman, and child back home. In a heart-pounding moment, Bonner's mind flashed back to the horrific memories of the battlefields, where he had seen the faces of his fallen comrades, soldiers who had been beside him, fighting for the same cause, who now lay dead on Earth's soil. His heart tightened with grief, but the pain only fueled his determination. He thought of the men and women who had sacrificed everything for their world, and he promised them that their fight would not be in vain. The aliens thought they were going to win, that they had the power, the technology, the weaponry, but they were wrong. They didn't understand the spirit of humanity, the drive that came from the heart, the fire that never went out, no matter how tough the situation seemed. Bonner's knife found its mark again, slashing across another alien soldier's chest. He moved with incredible speed, his every motion precise and deadly. The aliens couldn't keep up. They were too reliant on their technology, too used to facing enemies who had no choice but to submit to their power. But Bonner was different. He wasn't afraid. And with each alien he defeated, he proved that humanity had something far stronger than mere weapons. The remaining alien soldiers started to panic. They had never expected to face this kind of resistance. They had underestimated humanity, assuming that the humans they had captured were weak and primitive. But Bonner was showing them the truth. Humans had been hiding far more than anyone had realized. They had been biding their time, learning, adapting, and waiting for their moment to rise. As the last of the alien soldiers fell, Bonner stood panting, his body covered in the sweat and grime of battle. The ship was eerily silent, the buzzing of malfunctioning systems and the hum of the ship's failing power grid the only sounds left in the air. Bonner's chest heaved as he caught his breath, his heart still racing from the fight. He had done it. He had survived. But as he looked around, Bonner knew that the fight was far from over. The aliens would return. They would send reinforcements. This was just one battle in a much larger war, and Bonner couldn't afford to let his guard down. But there was one thing that the aliens had learned today, that humanity was not a race to be underestimated. The aliens had come to Earth, thinking they could take what they wanted. They had thought that their superior technology would crush humanity, but they had made a huge mistake. They had underestimated the true power of humanity, its will to survive, its heart, and its ability to adapt in the face of impossible odds. Bonner knew that this was only the beginning. The real fight had yet to come. With his comrades in his heart and his determination as strong as ever, Bonner turned to the next challenge. The aliens may have had the technology, but humanity had something much stronger, a fire that could never be extinguished. And as Bonner moved forward, he vowed to protect that fire with everything he had. The aliens would learn the hard way that messing with humanity was the biggest mistake they would ever make. Bonner wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for Earth, for humanity's future, and for the legacy of the soldiers who had given their lives so that others could live. The aliens had made the biggest mistake of all. They had dared to challenge the humans, and now they would feel the consequences. The air inside the alien ship was thick with tension as Bonner made his way through the darkened halls. The once pristine corridors, with their glowing lights and shiny metal surfaces, now felt eerie, as though they were holding their breath. Everything was about to change. Bonner knew this was the moment, his only chance to escape and strike back at the aliens who had captured him and threatened Earth. He wasn't just going to break free. He was going to bring down the entire ship, and with it, the power of the alien forces that had dared to invade humanity's home. Bonner's mind raced as he navigated the labyrinth-like hallways of the alien vessel. His body was sore, his energy running low after the countless battles he had already fought. But his spirit was stronger than ever. He had seen too much to give up now. With every step, the weight of the mission pushed him forward. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about revenge. It was about showing the aliens that humanity would never be conquered, that they had made a mistake underestimating Earth's resolve. He finally reached the control room, the heart of the alien ship. Inside, an enormous AI system hummed quietly, its glowing core at the center of the room. The AI controlled everything: ship operations, weapons systems, and the defense protocols. Bonner's breath caught as he stepped inside. The room was bathed in a cold, sterile light, but he knew that within those walls was the key to everything. If he could disable the AI, he could turn the tables on the aliens. The ship would be their prison, not his. Bonner moved quickly to the central console, his hands shaking slightly as he connected his gear to the system. He had studied the alien technology during his time aboard the ship, learning its weaknesses and how to exploit them. Now, it was time to put that knowledge to the test. As he worked, the ship seemed to grow quieter, as though it too was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. Bonner's fingers danced across the keys, inputting commands, rerouting power, and bypassing security protocols. The AI wasn't prepared for this. It had been designed to fight, to outsmart, to adapt. But it had never encountered a human like Bonner. With a final command, Bonner hit the enter key. A series of alarms went off, lights flashing red as the ship's systems began to collapse in on themselves. The alien eye, once in full control, was now compromised. It was as if the ship itself had awoken from a long slumber, and it was angry. A loud boom echoed through the control room as the first of the ship's weapons systems malfunctioned. The walls shuddered, and Bonner grinned to himself. The aliens had underestimated him, but now they would feel the full force of his fury. The AI-controlled weapons, those once deadly guns that had kept him and his fellow soldiers trapped, had turned against their creators. Alien drones and turrets that had once been their allies were now firing on the aliens themselves. Bonner could hear the sounds of chaos echoing through the ship's corridors. The aliens were losing control. The rebellion had begun. Bonner didn't waste any time. He grabbed a weapon from the nearby armory, and without looking back, he ran toward the ship's main corridors. The battle was far from over. With the ship's defenses compromised, it was time for Bonner to lead the charge. The aliens had taken him prisoner, but now, it was time to show them that the fight was far from over. As Bonner raced through the ship, he encountered a group of alien soldiers trying to regain control of the situation. They fired at him, but their aim was sloppy. The AI's malfunctioning systems were causing their weapons to misfire. Bonner was faster. He dove behind a metal pillar, narrowly avoiding a blast, and then popped out, firing back. His shots were precise, hitting their targets with deadly accuracy. Alien soldiers dropped one by one, their weapons useless in the face of Bonner's onslaught. The aliens had never faced anything like this. They had expected to fight an unprepared, helpless human, but what they had found instead was a warrior, a soldier who had spent years training to protect humanity at all costs. The ship's corridors were now a war zone. Sparks flew as laser fire ricocheted off the walls, and explosions rocked the ship's internal systems. Bonner moved quickly, using the ship's layout to his advantage, leading a swift and deadly charge against the alien invaders. He was a whirlwind of fury, his movements fast and calculated as he tore through the alien ranks. The AI's malfunctioning defenses only worked in his favor, creating confusion among the alien soldiers as they tried, and failed, to regain control. Bonner didn't stop to catch his breath. There was no time for hesitation. He had come this far, and he wasn't going to fail now. His mission was clear: bring down the aliens, save Earth, and escape this nightmare alive. But it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about proving that humanity could rise above any challenge, any force, no matter how advanced or powerful. As Bonner moved through the wreckage of the alien ship, he encountered more soldiers, each one more determined than the last to stop him. But it didn't matter. The human spirit was stronger than anything the aliens could throw at him. With each enemy he took down, Bonner knew he was closer to victory. The alien ship was falling apart, and there was nothing the invaders could do to stop it. The sound of metal tearing echoed through the halls as Bonner reached the central hub, where the final defense systems were located. Alien robots, previously under the control of the AI, now ran wild, firing aimlessly at anything that moved. Bonner leaped into the fray, using his knowledge of the ship's systems to disable the robots one by one. He wasn't just a soldier now. He was a force of nature, using his environment to his advantage, turning the tide of battle with every move he made. The visuals around him were nothing short of chaotic. Explosions lit up the darkened hallways, and smoke billowed from broken systems. The ship was on the verge of collapse, and Bonner was the one leading the charge. It was a sight to behold. A lone human, fighting against an entire fleet of invaders, using nothing but his wits, his combat skills, and his determination to survive. As Bonner pushed forward, he encountered the final group of alien soldiers. They were more heavily armed than any he had faced before, but Bonner was ready. The firefight was intense, with blinding flashes of laser fire and the sharp crack of weapons discharging. But Bonner didn't hesitate. He dove into the chaos, his mind clear, his focus razor-sharp. The fight was long, but in the end, he emerged victorious. As the last alien fell, Bonner stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving with exertion. The battle was over. The alien ship was in ruins. The invaders had been defeated. Humanity had proven itself once again. And Bonner, the lone soldier, had been the one to make it happen. Bonner stood in the heart of the alien ship, adrenaline coursing through his veins as the final showdown loomed ahead. The control room was chaotic, lights flickering in the wake of his attack, and the once pristine alien technology was now in disarray. Yet, even with the ship falling apart around him, Bonner remained focused, his every move calculated. He knew the worst was still to come. The ship's captain, the one alien leader who had been the mastermind behind the invasion, was waiting for him. Bonner had fought his way through hundreds of alien soldiers, outsmarted their AI systems, and turned the tables on their powerful weapons. But now, facing the captain, he was about to face the true test of his strength and cunning. The captain wasn't just any alien soldier. This being was a master strategist, with superior intelligence and strength, engineered to be the ultimate warrior. Bonner knew this would be a battle unlike any he had fought before. The alien captain, a towering figure with dark, glowing eyes and a battle-hardened physique, stepped forward. His presence was overwhelming, radiating power and confidence. The captain sneered as he looked down at Bonner, his tone filled with disdain. "You, human, you truly believe you can defeat me?" Bonner's lips curled into a grim smile. "I don't believe. I know I can." Without another word, the battle began. The captain charged first, moving faster than Bonner had anticipated, his powerful limbs crashing into the air like a force of nature. Bonner barely managed to dodge the first strike, his body twisting with agility as he rolled to the side. The alien captain was fast, and his attacks were relentless. The sound of metal slamming against metal echoed in the room as Bonner parried blow after blow, each one testing the limits of his strength. His breath was heavy, but he didn't back down. His training, his years of fighting for Earth's survival, all of it came rushing back to him. This was no longer just a battle for his life. It was a battle for humanity's future. The captain's next strike came with a blast of energy from his gauntlet, sending Bonner flying across the room. He hit the ground hard, pain shooting up his spine, but he quickly recovered, rolling back to his feet. The captain stood over him, confident that he had gained the upper hand. "Your technology is primitive," the captain taunted, his voice cold. "Your people are weak. How do you expect to defeat me?" Bonner wiped the blood from his mouth and grinned. "We don't need your advanced tech. We have something you'll never understand." With that, Bonner lunged forward, using his environment to his advantage. He grabbed a piece of broken alien technology, a shard of glass-like metal that glowed with an eerie light, and used it to deflect the captain's energy blasts. The alien leader was momentarily thrown off guard, but Bonner wasn't done. With a swift move, he grabbed the shard and threw it at the captain, striking him in the chest. The captain staggered, stunned by the unexpected attack. For a moment, Bonner saw a flicker of doubt in the captain's eyes, a realization that maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't as helpless as the aliens had thought. Bonner seized this moment, rushing forward with all the strength he had left. He tackled the captain to the ground, using his sheer determination to pin the larger, more powerful alien down. But the battle was far from over. The captain was strong, and he fought back with all his might, his claws reaching for Bonner's throat. It was a brutal struggle, each blow echoing through the room like thunder. Bonner's strength was waning, but he refused to give up. He thought of Earth, of the countless lives that had been lost to the alien invasion, and of the soldiers who had died fighting for their home. The memory of their sacrifice fueled his resolve. In the final moments of their struggle, Bonner remembered something. The ship's systems were still malfunctioning, still unstable. The AI had been compromised, and its defenses were no longer reliable. He quickly scanned the room, looking for anything he could use to his advantage. That's when he saw it, a control panel near the back of the room. It was sparking and flickering, but it was still operational. Bonner knew that if he could access it, he could unleash a chain reaction that would destroy the ship once and for all. With one last burst of energy, Bonner pushed the captain off him, knocking the alien leader back with a brutal punch to the chest. The captain staggered, unable to regain his balance in time. Bonner didn't waste a second. He sprinted toward the control panel, ignoring the alien's furious cries behind him. As he reached the panel, he slammed his hand down on a series of buttons, sending the final command to the ship's systems. The ship groaned, its engines sputtering as the power core began to destabilize. Bonner turned just in time to see the captain charging at him one last time, but it was too late. The ship was already beyond saving. The captain reached out for him, but Bonner didn't hesitate. With a final, defiant smirk, he activated the self-destruct sequence. The alien captain's eyes widened in disbelief as the ship's core exploded, sending shockwaves through the vessel. The blast was massive, tearing the ship apart in a glorious eruption of fire and debris. Bonner was thrown to the ground by the force of the explosion, his body battered and bruised. But he didn't care. The ship was gone. The aliens' invasion was over. Bonner pulled himself up, breathing heavily. He looked around the room, now filled with smoke and ruin, and felt a sense of triumph. Humanity had won. Against all odds, Earth had stood its ground, and the aliens, once so confident in their superiority, had been defeated. With the ship's destruction, Bonner knew it was time to leave. He made his way to the escape pod, his movements slow but purposeful. As he sat inside the pod, preparing for his journey back to Earth, he looked out at the wreckage of the alien vessel. The once mighty ship was now nothing more than a pile of burning debris. The aliens had learned a harsh lesson. They had underestimated humanity, and now they knew better. As the escape pod launched into the void of space, Bonner's thoughts turned to Earth, his home, the planet he had fought so hard to protect. He knew the war wasn't over, but for now, humanity had proven that it would never go down without a fight. No matter how advanced the enemy, no matter how powerful the weapons, Earth would always rise up. The aliens had made a grave mistake by underestimating humanity's strength, and Bonner's story would serve as a warning to anyone who dared to challenge Earth again. The final message was clear. Humanity might be seen as primitive by alien standards, but in reality, it was a force to be reckoned with. The aliens had thought they could wipe out Earth, but they had failed. They had underestimated the human spirit, and that was their biggest mistake. The fight was far from over, but Bonner's victory proved one thing: Earth would never be easily defeated.